everybody. Well, happy rainy Memorial Day if you're in the New England area. I think it's supposed to go away, the rain anyway, in about an hour, and then the rest of the week looks pretty good. So, fingers crossed. But today, there was a special request for sciatica, and I'm going to offer some tips for that with the caveat that if you've got a serious sciatic condition or pain, you got to get checked out. You know, there's no way around it. And a lot of people think of yoga as a cure-all, and they come up to me after class when we were actually in a live class and say, I got this thing here, here, and think that I'm going to be able to magically fix the problem or tell them how to fix the problem. So that's the first thing I always say, is just Western medicine is great, particularly at pinpointing where the problem may be. And sciatica is a nerve from the low back running through the back of the glute, piriformis, glute maximal area. And then if it gets really bad, it runs from essentially your butt down the back of the leg and connects with a whole channel of nerves, which could go all the way down into your calf muscle. It's really aggravating. So you may not get all the answers if you go get checked out, but you'll get, especially with a good PT person, some strategy, some diagnosis, and if it's just a mild case, it shouldn't last more than a few weeks to a few months. But if you continue to aggravate it, in my experience, the nerves they're not happy with that sort of pushing and prodding. So the strategy in yoga is, as always, is to try and take our minds into that area, to do a little assessment through some yoga postures that are pretty simple, and then to breathe into those areas and try to open up space. So that's the plan, and we'll get into it in a comfortable position with our breath work. So you can be seated, you can be lying down, and if I see a few people I haven't seen in a while, you can just take your hands to your back ribs and feel them spreading open and releasing as you inhale and exhale. So since the low back is part of this puzzle, we want to make sure that we're feeling that inhaling diaphragm spread open the basket of ribs there, and then exhale, release it. And we're just going to do 20 breaths like this. Feeling the breath come up the back ribs, mid-ribs, shoulder blades, and then exhale. Let the body fall into its alignment. Keeping your jaw, your tongue, chest and shoulders relaxed, breathing downward, or letting the breath be drawn downward through the opening of the diaphragm. You can move faster or slower, feeling maybe a subtle rocking action in the sitting bones, rocking back as you inhale and forward as you exhale, feeling the femur bones as they transit into the hip sockets. Now as you breathe, maybe feeling the inner groin. On exhale, on the outer lateral aspect of the leg on the exhale. Letting the joints, the spine, and everything move with the breath, or be moved. Bring the breath more deeply into the framework of your body. The brain starts to come into the party. On the next exhale, release. Let the breath trail off and pause. And just enjoy that complete relaxation into the framework of the body. And of course, you may notice, if you've done your breath work, certain asymmetries, tightnesses. Your skeleton may feel, well, this isn't perfect. And those are just the clues that you can then begin your practice. But let's do an inhale, if you haven't already, and hold that for 10 seconds. Feeling the buoyancy of the upper hoop, the heart, around the shoulder blades, the mid-back, collarbones floating, and then exhale, release. And if you want, you can dive forward, put your hands on the forearms on the chair. Brief pause before you do the next step. And then let's try again. Inhale, exhale. Inhale backwards. Open like wings. Right up to the armpits. Exhale, release. And once you know what's going on, close your eyes and do this. Or have a soft gaze, working from the inside out. Once you let the diaphragm know you're dancing with it, working with it, and then eventually begin to lessen your own grip on the diaphragm and the breath. It will achieve its own tidal rhythm. We'll begin to deepen. The inhales not only spread the ribs and fill the cavity of the rib cage and lungs, shoulder girdle, but you can feel or imagine the downward action to the pelvic floor in between the sitting bones. And try to move the breath without impedance. Relaxing the throat, tongue. As you exhale, don't push the breath out. Just let it softly expel. Taking with it any stress, tiredness, or jumpiness. 2 more. And release. Relax the abdomen, the throat, the tongue, the whole vertical line. You could call it your, or imagine it as your life thread or conduit, running vertically from the top of the head to the tip of the tailbone. So the straightness that happens in the pause, the exhale, should be one that's natural and doesn't require a lot of muscular force. If it does, you need to modify your sitting position. You sit and soak in the pause, relaxing all the way up to your brain and your muscles of your face. I often think I'm taking a little bath here, just soaking, and the pleasing sensation of all the cells sparkling. And then when you need to, you don't have to just yet, inhale, and just cap that off without tension in the throat, and feel the nice buoyancy around the rim of the heart, shoulder blades, the back of the neck lengthens. Exhale, release. And if you want to dive down, and then you do round 3. And if you're feeling any spaciness, you can lay down and do it. If you want to switch the cross of your legs, if you're in Sukhasana. And inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Hopefully now things have slowed down and deepened. And you're a deep sea diver, descending into the interior of the body, feeling the diaphragm, how it moves the ribs. Eventually you'll feel almost like a peristalsis of all the ribs, like piano keys being touched from the bottom to the top, right up to the scapula ridges, which in turn touch the collarbones, like a couple of piano keys as well. Your body lifted and deposited, as if lifted by the wave of the inhale, and deposited, a sense of groundedness as you exhale. The wave begins to take on its own wave length, so to speak, or rhythm. And then you become more of the observer, the passenger, the surfer on that wave. Your job is to stay in the pocket. It's like a surfer rides in the center of the wave. One more. Exhale, release. Release any tension in the front creases of the legs, where the legs meet the hips, the belly, the low back, and sit like a little kid. I think of little kids when they're infants, like a beanbag. So the hips are weighted, but the low back is buoyant by virtue of the opening of the diaphragm. Pause calmly, feeling any tensions you need to further release, and cast into the pause of the exhale. The pause is just a state of awareness. Everything stops, you're able to assess. Then you, when you're ready, Inhale. And you just feel that nice buoyancy in the heart. Shoulders hang. The upper arm bones hang on that buoyancy. Balloon-like, expansive. And then release. Now we're all going to spill forward, either on your forearms on chair, or you can take it to the ground on your yoga block. But you want to distribute the spine in a mild forward fold so that your hips, your low back, your scaps, everything can feel comfortable and you can breathe awareness into them. So when you feel the outer hips with the low back, and just come into your very gentle, deep breath. If you know Ujjayi breath with the sound, you can now close your mouth as you exhale. And just feel that, almost like hear that fogging up a mirror sound. That's going to give a cue to your nervous system to further dissolve any tension. And then you come up. So in a moment, we'll go on to our backs. Before we do, we can feel a little bit of the ribs and how we use them to twist to the side. Okay, so if we go ahead and just take the back of our right hand to the low ribs and the right side, and we can either take our left hand to our left knee like that, or in a second, I'm going to have you do the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your left hand on your front of your shoulder. And inhale, just feel that right side now start to open up, and like the right rib cage is filling, and let that fullness, the breath coming up from where your hand is, all the way up to the right shoulder blade, begin to just rotate you gently over to the left. And exhale, release. And you do it again, and you can almost feel like you're rocking back a little bit toward the back of the sit bones, and just fill and let the fill twist you, and then exhale. You want to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and feel that whole rib cage roll over. Can we do the other side? You want to switch across? You can. Back of the left hand on the back low ribs, right hand on right knee. So instead of wrenching and pulling with this right hand into a twist, inhale, fill that whole left rib cage. Can you feel the back of it expanding? And it just rotates you a little over the right. Exhale. Same thing. And as you rotate and fill the left ribs, the left sitting bone is grounding. So you have two directions of awareness, down and up. All on that left side, it just spills you over. And then if you want to do the Pledge of Allegiance, right hand to right collarbone. And the idea is to try and feel the rib cage. We're just opening our ribs and getting our breath going. So let's do one more. We're going to now take, you can stay with that one, or you can take your right hand to your left knee. And I don't want you to pull. So this is the old way when people pull with their arm. And we just breathe into those back ribs, the right ribs. You need to take your hand to the back of the ribs. You can. Feel them spread open. If I were to spread my left fingers open across the lower ribs, it's going to give them a signal to spread open too. Now, if you want a little extra, if you can, you can take your left hand across your belly and see if you can just get fingers dug into the side ribs. And as you fill those ribs, gently, gently give them an assist, drawing the ribs across to the left. But don't let that left hand pull the ribs over violently. And then release. Inhale. And you're just moving the fascia in the low back, right up to the quadratus. And exhale. Now from here, we're just going to take our hands to the shoulders, both of them. Or if you're a little more advanced or cursed with flexibility, you can take a Garuda Asana with your left arm coming under your right elbow. And as we inhale, we're going to round and pull the elbows in whichever configuration you have toward our belly. Feel all the back ribs spread. And exhale, lift the elbows up. Give it the side view, inhale, curl, exhale, rock forward. Now we're just opening up the fascia of the ribs and the shoulder blades. And then release. Try the other side. And this is all preliminary warm-up. You can do the first twist, the easy one, or you take your left hand, your right knee. You might take the back of your right hand to your lower left ribs. Inhale, fill, and rotate. Exhale, release. Really try to bring the breath into that left lower lobe of the lung, all the way up. Spread the ribs. Let the left scapula move away from the spine, and release. Just work with the rhythm of your breath. Especially on a rainy day, all this fascia gets sticky. If you want, if you can, take your back hand, your right hand, thread it across the midsection. Fingers may be able to grab. Now, if you couldn't get to your ribs, for example, you could grab your t-shirt, but be careful, and use the cloth of your t-shirt to rotate you gently. Inhale, gentle draw, and exhale, release. As you do these mild twists with your breath, pay attention to your sitting bones and not letting them get asymmetrical in how they feel to the ground. They're both equally weighted. Okay, and release. So that was keeping the hips down, and now we're going to work with that low back on the ground. You might need a towel for your low back underneath your sacrum if your spine is a little more rounded, or under your head. I'm going to leave that up to you, but take a peek before you go down, because I'm essentially going to be, my first exercise is going to be to try and take the feet hip width or wider, just knock the knees together and flatten the low back entirely to the mat. And then the opposite pattern is to let the knees come open, and so that there's a rounding in the low back. And just to be able to move here from knock knee, flatness, and then opening. Okay, so set yourself up. Maybe you need something under your head, or if you're really rounded, you could take the towel roll under your low back. But I want you to be able to feel the fascia as you just open and close the knees. In this case, we'll go inhale, open, exhale, close, in the more typical pattern, and make it comfortable. And all I want you to do is to try and assess which of these patterns, the curved spine, arching off the ground, or with a flat back feels better. And just continue to work with your breath. 9 times out of 10, with the sciatic condition, the knock-knee position, flattening your low back like a nice, oh, why am I thinking like a snake and its coils on the ground. That's the best I can do on a Memorial Day, Monday. But as you knock the knees together, this also gives you a sense of what we worked on last week, the Mula Bandha, the pelvic floor. And you can add that to the puzzle. As you exhale, knock your knees together and spread your kidneys and low back into the floor. You're going to just pull on that thread of the pelvic floor without getting tense in your throat. And a few more times. So this is a big part of the assessment. And one of the initial cues is to flatten that low back and just create some space. Okay? So I don't need it, but I'm going to take the towel roll under my low back just to show those that do, which may be half of you. A little mild towel roll. And then from that action of the knock knees, we're just going to take a easy right Uttanasana, right knee held in the right hands. The left knee you're going to keep bent. And the towel roll can be useful here because it's like the center of the seesaw. As you inhale, you're going to pull the knee a little bit toward you and think of the low back flattening, spreading, and exhale, release it forward. So we've done this before. It's just called upswing, downswing. And again, if you have a sciatic pain in your right hip, then you're just feeling, okay, inflection. As the knee comes toward you, does that open up some space for you? And you got to use your breath. You can't just pull your knee in and out and think that things are going to play out well for you. Temptation is to slide the left leg forward, and you can, but you have to make sure that it doesn't produce a lot of asymmetry in the hips. Otherwise, your job is made much more difficult when you release the right knee forward to try and get the hips to square the pelvic floor to help pull them into alignment. So that's why just keeping that left knee bent is probably a wise move. Also because we're going to come right into figure 4 now, crossing the right ankle over the left knee. And if you're really in pain, you can just rock your hips. Inhale, rock them toward you, flatten the low back, exhale, rock them away. Let the whole spine move, the head move. That could be it. Otherwise, on the next inhale, you can pull the figure 4, levitate it. So the left foot goes off the ground and hold your left hamstring. And you can breathe into this yoga pose. So that you can hold all the way to the left shin, but it doesn't matter. You have to assess whether you're compressing the discs in your low back or whether you're able to still breathe and spread the kidney area, the sacrum. Again, bringing your breath into the posture to give it some efficacy, give it some life. So release your bind, and now you're keeping that figure 4 with the right knee bent. See if you can just bring the knee toward you. Bring that right knee toward you, still keeping your right ankle on your outside of your left knee. Okay, so some of you, what you're going to do is just take your left hand and wrap it right over that right knee. And then start to create a fullness through that right hip and that whole lower back. Spread it out, move it forward along the mat or the towel roll, flattening the curve of the low back. And just creating a little loop between the opposite arm, the left arm, and the right knee. And that's all you need. But if you can, I know it's hard on your back, or you can just try to follow my verbal cues. Some of you can get the knees right on top of one another now. So we've got the right knee nestled right on top of the left knee, like a Gomukhasana. And again, if you're super jammed in the low back, you just stand your towel roll, you stand your back. And this is mirroring the knee to knee, the knock knee position that allows you to create some space in your low back and your sacrum. You got to work for it with your breath. Or you can now draw the knees toward you and just hold either the front or the back knee and breathe here. Another nice modification. And if you need to roll out, take a peek and re-roll, is take a strap around the feet as the feet fishtail out. And again, you just have to make sure you're not getting too hard in your limbs, pushing too hard with your feet, cross legs, pulling too hard with your arms, so you lose the mission of the breath going down into that right hip area. Now you can really feel, you should start to be able to feel the right piriformis, which is in the outer hip, and just trying to open up space with your breath. Remember, the nerves don't like to be horsed around. Okay, let's come out of that one. And let's see if we could do the other side now. As we uncross the legs, we're going to hold our left knee, right foot is down, and just start to inhale the knee toward you, creating space in that left lower back. Exhale, move it away. Let the inside move the outside. Let the breath coming in filling. As if you start really just jamming and pulling on your knee. And this is hard not to get into because if you're broken, your body's broken, you're like, I don't want to just take a wrench and whack it. And what you have to do is nurse it. And let the breath and the blood and everything just move, getting a little massage if you've got the low back on the floor, on the towel roll, on those fibers of the low back into the outer hip. Okay, so that should feel good. Now you can just make a figure four, and let's see if we can breathe into the low back here. Some of you would stay there, or you inhale, pull the figure four toward you. Doesn't have to be much, doesn't have to be your maximum. And bind. Now the idea here is not to pull the whole figure four bind violently toward you, but to just get a connection and then bring your breath and let the diaphragm start to breathe and open this into that left hip.
So if you have to modify, you modify. You could be there for a minute if you have a real problem, and the left hip is often the culprit. Now we're going to just drop the right foot down, lift the left knee up a little bit so it comes closer to your face, and reach diagonally across and over that left knee with the right hand. Just make a little connection, and then it's almost like I want to expand my breath into the body, so the left knee and hip move away, and the right shoulder moves in the opposite direction. I can pulse, I can stay. I'm just trying to feel now, I can just start to move some space into the lower left. Kidney area and outer hip. So that could be as good as it gets for you. But if you can now, you're going to just naturally let this left knee slide forward on top of your right knee for plunk. Some people's bodies don't support this. And you can stay here and you can breathe into this. And you could, if it's really jamming your low back and your SI joints, you could even take your palms now to the top of the leg crease and just gently push. And so that'll open up some space. But you can also, and this is where your own intuition has to come into play, you can now take your crossed legs, your Gomukhasana legs, and cradle them in your arms, or you can take a strap. Some are so flexible they can hold the feet, but you don't want to go into or past the point where your breath can feed the pose. Okay, so I could do that. My left hip is usually the culprit. I had sciatica once, and it was in the left hip. I'm going to talk about it more, but left hip is usually the culprit. And now I'm going to take my strap around my feet like this, my knees crossed, and let the pose and the legs balloon out away from me a little bit, like they're levitating up to the sky. I have a little more control of the symmetry of the hips. Rather than the old way of just pulling violently down into the body. Okay, so again, if that's feeling good, you stay with that, and otherwise you release and take the legs forward. And now we're going to do some lifts up into bridge pose, and you'll be able to assess your spine here. As you inhale, you're going to lift the hips up just a little bit, and you're going to keep that sense of a flat, spreading kidney area rather than arching the low back. And let the knees move forward and exhale, release. Is any pain in this? Reduce, or come up with the knock knees and see how that feels. That's going to open up the hip points, the SI joints a little bit easier. Okay, and then go ahead and pull both these in, hold them in your hand, and just breathe into that low back. Set your feet down. You can eliminate the towel if you want, or stay with it if it feels good. Arms come out to the sides, inhale, and exhale, the knees just drop a little bit over to the left. Inhale, knees come to center, exhale, windshield wiper your knees to the right. And just do this a few times. And don't go past the point where there's any pinching or compression. Should feel really good on the low back, and this is another low back release. We've done it many times before, just going a little more therapeutically and mindfully into the sciatica part of the outer hip. Okay, then go ahead and roll off to one side, come up to seated, and we're gonna work a little bit of standing and forward folding. So go ahead and stand up and let's move a little bit just to bring our breath into our bodies. And we're gonna just swing from side to side here, pat the front of the shoulder. And then take a wider stance, like a parallel footed stance. And then just start to move the arms as you shift from foot to foot. So as we bend into our right knee, we're going to just circle with our right arm across, and then exhale, center, inhale, bend into the right knee. And all we're doing is just feeling those back ribs again, feeling the connection down to the outer hip, and getting things moving. Now we're going to go into a horse stance. So we're going to, or goddess pose, keep our feet parallel, and we can slide our hands down our legs and just stroke the quads. If you've been biking, you take your hands and take them to your knees or the meat of your quad and just look down and try to find a neutral pelvis. Drop your tailbone, and I want you to feel the low back here spread out. And if you can sit down into it, coming more upright, that feels like it's not too strenuous, you can do that. You can do some of our hoop arm breaths. If there's any jamminess in the low back now, you can traction it, just taking the heels of the hands now a little closer to the hips. Sit down and just look down and just let the sacrum and the tailbone and the low back get some traction. Slide the hands to the mid-thigh and inhale, rotate the gaze to the left. Breathe here. Feel the hips, both hip points, and sitting bones dropping evenly. But we're trying to breathe open that right side rib cage and hip, and then we go to center and rotate the other way. So now I'm in my left hip, which is for me the gamey one. I want to drop the tailbone down, the sit bone down, and breathe up the ribs. So two actions: drop, dropping the pelvis, keeping it low with the right, and I'm going to let you move on your own a few times. So remember when we did the rotations at the beginning of class and all the arm things we did to pull the ribs across, feel those invisible hands, and keep the sitting bones both anchored so you don't get pinching in the low back. And then go ahead and come up. So one of the interesting things with sciatica, like if you have it, is sometimes it's a lack of strength actually in that outer hip. So I'm just going to show you, this is kind of a workshop class. A lot of people use kettlebells. I don't have a kettlebell, a little vibrating ball. I'm just going to show you an exercise. You could have a tiny bag of groceries, something you can just lift with one hand easily, and it shouldn't be much weight.
But in that horse stance, what you're going to do is be able to pick up that bag across the body like we just did, without lifting. I got my left arm reaching to the right, without lifting up through this left pelvis. Lift it up, and then I'm going to drop that weight, whatever it is. Maybe you just have a bunch of bananas behind me, like this, and just sit down into this hip. I come across, inhale, exhale. Simple. Don't go deep, and be careful that this left hip doesn't come up and down. So you're building the strength in the outer hip. If it's the right side, you're gonna take the ball onto the right hand, inhale, come up, exhale. Could be a dumbbell. I wouldn't use more than 5 pounds to start. And see how I'm on my horse. I'm not gonna move the hip up and down. And that's gonna build strength in the outer hip here. So ironically, having weakness in the outer hip can be a problem. Let's do a little bit of work in warriors just to move around, and then we'll get into the forward folding aspect of the sciatica. So let's take our Tadasana, bend our knees and reach up to chair pose. And if you bring your knees together and knock them together like we did on our back, can you feel the low back spread open in the same knock knee aspect that we had on our backs? Even if you take your fingers now to the back, lean forward a little and just spread the kidneys, drop the tailbone, find your pelvic floor. And then when you do this pose, your low back should feel much better. Let's step back with the left foot. Warrior one. Inhale, straighten the front leg. Bring the hands to the belly. And exhale, circle. Just start to flow, just to move our limbs a little bit. And again, if you have sciatic issues in your left hip, this is where you're probably going to feel it as we start to tone the back of the left leg to stretch the front. So you may need to modify and just lift the back heel and bend the back knee. We're all going to come down into our low lunge for a second anyway. Drop our left knee down, you can kick the toes out. And just start to inhale, pull out of the lunge a little, around the back, and exhale, sink. As you move this left hip back and forth, again, I want you to just assess. For me, this feels good. I round and I stretch the kidney down into the little bit of the psoas, and then exhale. But depending on what kind of compression you have, one or the other may feel better. And so you work in your range of motion, you work the stretch. For those that have been biking and rowing, getting the quad stretch is going to be one of the keys. Now, if you can, you're going to take your left hand down to the ground like that and get a little bit of a hip flexor stretch. Some can reach back and grab that back foot. I don't want you to tense the back of the leg, however. I'm just going to hold that foot. That's not in your repertoire. Don't worry about it. We can get to another way. So part of the equation is creating a little space down the back of this leg. So you have to be really careful about squeezing and tensing the hamstring. So again, if you have it in your practice, Your left fingertips go down, you rotate right. And instead of tensing that back leg, you just start to feel a little stretch through the front of the leg. Okay. Let's take it down onto the ground. You can put your knees together and take it to hands and knees, and then child's pose. Come up to downward dog. Curl your toes under. Pedal out your feet. And then walk your feet toward your hand. Take a forward fold after you take a flat back, placing your hands on your shins. Again, feel the low back spreading out here. Flat back is really important. And then as you fold, bend your knees quite a bit. Make your low back feels good. Then your knees come up through chair, knocking your knees together and getting that, oh boy, I can't even think of a good word, that snake-like spreading of the low back here. And then come Tadasana, step your right foot back. We just start to flow in the way that we've been flowing in our Warrior One, straightening front leg, exhale, sinking down. Now, if you've got issues in your right hip, you're going to feel them the lower you drop. And I began to cover, I think last Friday, a way to think of drawing that left hip back toward the right hip, using your Mula Bandha to help any asymmetry in the low back as you sit in the pose. Again, you can take the backs of the hands to the low back, breathe into it, let the stretch happen through the front of the right leg, and then eventually you're going to lift that right heel off the ground, set the right knee down, get there in a way that's not injurious, and then we move back on inhale and sink down, exhale. Again, you want to be mild-mannered or mild movement-mannered when you have issues in your low back and you're just feeling, okay, here's extension and here's rounded flexion. And which one brings relief into this area? That could be it, or you place your right hand down on the ground and then maybe you can pick up the back foot. And you don't want to do anything but hold that foot, let the quad stretch. We're going to get to this in another way soon. And release. Take both hands down, both knees, scoop together, child's pose. Walk your hands back toward your knees. Take a peek. So I'm going to show you a little more, a little more extreme measure for those that are more advanced to cross the legs as we did on our backs and come into what's called Gomukhasana. This is essentially cross-leg position, seated, if we were just to drop into it like so. Those that might be able to do that can just do it now if they want to avoid the gymnastics of this entry. Otherwise, take a peek. You're going to do down dog, bring the left foot to the center, and the right foot crosses in front of it. And I have a cross-legged down dog. I can bend my knees quite a bit. So now I've got the knees, right knee on top of left, as I did on my back. I'm going to lower the knees, the cross knees down to the ground. So now I'm on hands and knees with crossed knees. This is maybe out of the repertoire of some of you, but I can breathe here into that low back.
And I can start to sit back like child's pose, crossed knees. Some of you who are cursed with flexibility can walk your hands all the way back and come into the same pose that I showed you moments ago. And you're taking your hands under that right knee and pushing down a little. Just try and level out the low back. And maybe even holding over that cross knee a little bit. Piriformis. So you can just switch the cross of your legs. You can go onto your back with the strap as I showed you earlier. Or if you're a little more limber, you can get your down dog going and move the right foot over to the left. The left foot crosses in front of it. Bend the knees, lengthen your arms. And then drop down to hands and crossed knees. And try to build out the shoulder blades, build out the low back. Nice rounded, voluminous spread, and then exhale, start to take it back. You can just move here a little bit. What you're trying to avoid is asymmetry in the hips. Even though we've created asymmetrical conditions, we're now stretching the left piriformis, the left knee on top. And you can just sneak back and back and back. And without injuring your knees, if you had any sort of knee issues, you would do the one on your back. Here you are down in Gomukhasana. And you can see my left side is, maybe you can see it, the knees lifted a little higher off the right knee than my other side. So this whole band of the outer hip is a little gamey for me. So I gotta just make sure that I'm getting the left low back anchored down. You could be sitting on your blanket or your towel roll here, and you basket under your upper knee. That's a nice little prop. And you can lean forward if you want. I sometimes feel like staying upright and just breathing down into this outer back, left back is the best. All right, so unravel in the safest possible way. Take a child's pose for a couple breaths. Then we'll finish off with some forward folds. In a sec, you can also take a downward dog if you feel like it. I'm just going to grab my water. So if you have a chair, now's the time to grab it. And I'm going to show you to finish off. This has been a not so athletic class, but hopefully useful. The forward folding strategy, one leg that is going to help you, again, bring some space into the outer hip area. So if I want to work this right hip, I'm going to take my right leg up on the chair. Now for you, it might be just down here on the chair, right? And if balance is an issue, then you just go to a wall and you can use a wall with your left hand like that. So what's the most important thing here? I'm going to do a forward fold. This is extended leg. I'm going to take my right hand, my thumb, to the hip holster. And as I start to go into this stretch, forward fold, I can bend the front knee if I want a little bit. And I want to feel that this right hip pocket and this right low back is still getting some nice space. So that's all I do is just, I'm going to stretch the hamstring, yes, gingerly. And I just want to not let this right hip lift up and seize that whole piriformis. So if you have more flex, more ability to go down, you can take your hands to the chair. But what you're really trying to monitor, and you can bend the back knee too a little bit, is the levelness of the hips and the breath into that right low back. Okay? I'm going to just sink right down to that left knee and let this leg be a little more passive, since I'm just trying to work openness in this hip. It's not about showing off your depth of your pose. Now, normally, what is this posture? This would be like a Parsvottanasana, where people have the left foot forward and they're dropping down like that. Great, but we're working therapeutically. So you might have your right hand in the wall, your left leg goes up the chair. You just slide your left thumb back into this hip crease. Both these can be a little bit bent, it's fine. Your right hand's to the wall or for support. And you just start to go down into this forward fold, but it's fairly mild. And you're just trying to feel, here's my bad side, it's the left side. I'm going to put my left hand right on my left back and just stroke it down. And just talk to the fascia right, to the outer hip, right down the back of that leg. I can trace the pattern of the sciatic nerve with my hands and just talk to it. So I want to stretch, but I don't want to aggravate. So now I have to get back into my breath. Maybe I can go deeper, but I don't want to seize up into the left kidney area. I want to breathe. Again, you can bend both knees, doesn't matter. How deep you go is really incidental. And then release. All right, so let's take the chairs away and have a seat. And we'll spend a little time just taking a forward fold with both legs. And take a towel onto your knees like that. And take a strap around your feet. So any forward folds with the sciatica you want to do gingerly. And I suggest a lot of knee lift, a lot of spread of the kidney area. And just milk it. Just spread those. Oh, it's like a cobra hood in the back kidneys. And again, a lot of awareness of the low back fibers to the outer hips and then forward. And then lying down for Shavasana. And you might just knock your knees together for a second, flatten your low back, and feel that sacrum unravel. In case it got tweaked by left and right sides. And you slide one leg forward, the other leg forward, and you release. Now a final sciatic exercise that PTs will give you is actually Supta Baddha Konasana. But it's really tricky because if I start to take the feet together and the knees wide, I could actually start pinching the SI joints and the area of the piriformis, the outer hips. So if you place your hands, you slide your hands under your low back, palms to the ground. You can support your low back, or even under you lift your knees up a little bit and go from left to right. Slide your hands, palms down, under your butt and your glute medials, and just feel them with the hands and allow them to stretch. can release one leg, release the other. You can even keep your hands under your glutes. And this really simple exercise, usually back in the day, we take a couple of yoga blocks on the outer hips. We'll flatten your low back a little bit. And you can slide one hand out, the other hand out, palms to the sky, legs spread open. So you can stay in your Shavasana as long as you like, or slide one foot toward you, the other foot. Carefully roll to one side, come up, and see what you've got.
For me, the low back now is spreading open down through the outer hips, and I can sit a little more comfortably. Hopefully that was helpful. Little therapy work on a Monday.